Hello, everybody. Welcome to our another episode of Joyful Parenting Podcast, where we have this special guest, Grace, who is into brain development. She's a whole brain developmental coach, and she has really decoded what exactly it needs so that the brain develops manifold times. And let's hear it from her. How did she get introduced to that? And what is the secret behind it? So, Grace, would you like to just share how did your journey start and why whole brain development coach?
Sure. First of all, Swati, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It is a real pleasure to connect with you.
Mhm.
Now, um, my journey started with finding answers to my own challenges that I faced as a parent. So when I became a mom 8 years ago, just like how most parents do, I wanted to give the best for my child. And I realized that I had no clue where to start, even though I had experience with dealing with kids because my parents run a school and I volunteered in that school when I was in college. I had no clue. And so I went on my own journey to learn. And so even though I never followed a particular system as such, I, did some activities with him. I read with him. I played with him. I sang with him. I was silly around him. And I noticed that he was hitting milestones way ahead of his age, right?
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
really blew me because I did not expect that coming, right? Because I was not following a set of, strategic path. And so, like, to give you an example, he started reading. When I say reading, not just simple three-letter words, CBC words or stuff, but reading chapter books when he was just 2 years old. It was like, how in the world did it even happen?
Right.
Um, and so I was just looking for support group. As I said, this is back like 8 years ago, when Facebook groups were popular. We did not have Instagram reels as such, right?
Right.
And so we spoke with his pediatrician and other people, and they suggested we find a support group for him. And so someone suggested we get him in Mensa. Mensa is one of the oldest high IQ societies in the world that gives support to highly gifted and talented kids. And so we got him tested, got him in Mensa. I was really happy. I thought I was doing the right thing. But it's just a matter of time. I realized I was not doing things right? Because it is high IQ is not the only thing
Hmm.
that is required. There are other
Right.
factors, other aspects of development that we also need to focus on, like social and emotional development, like the bonding with the child, the habits that we are supposed to help the child develop so things are automated, like the belief system that the child has. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Because I was getting into constant power struggles with him. And I was trying to get my own answers. So that is when I realized, hey, you know what? We are just looking at only some aspects of development,
Mhm.
right? Especially the cognitive aspects. And even when with respect to cognitive aspects, there are only some aspects that we are focusing on. There are
Mhm.
other things that we are missing out that are equally important, if not more important,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And so that is how my journey started. I started learning more about the brain, more about, early learning. And yeah, and those are my journey started to find answers for my own self. And now I'm sharing with other parents just like me.
Oh, lovely. That's quite lovely. So how do you actually describe whole brain development to parents who are really not familiar with the concept?
Okay. You see, at the end of the day, the brain is the master controller of our body. It controls everything that we do, from how we think, how we behave, how we feel, how we respond to other human beings. So it is the master controller.
Mhm.
And it can be divided into many ways, but the simplest way to divide the human brain is into its two hemispheres, the right brain and the left brain. And most of us would be familiar with the right brain, especially parents who have little children. But um, looking at the brain as a whole is a very important concept. See, the school leans more toward the left brain, and parents, especially during the first few years, and with social media, we have that awareness, they lean more towards the right brain.
Hmm.
So for someone who's new, let me just explain what these two hemispheres are and what are their functions so you can understand things better. So the right brain, we call it the genius brain because it has some really cool features, right? And the right brain has, of course, really cool features like subconscious learning. Like, for instance, um, it helps you learn without much thought, without much thinking. Like if, let's say that Swati, you go to a birthday party, right? And they play a song. You don't have to pay attention to the lyrics in that song or want to learn the lyrics in the song, but because it is played at the background repeatedly, on the way back home, you would find yourself singing that song, right? That's
Absolutely.
subconscious learning. Whereas the left brain would help you in conscious learning. You pay attention to what you're learning because you have an exam coming up. And the other thing is the right brain helps you process information at high speed and as images. It favors images. So if you're reading a book, your right brain will help you take in images. But the left brain would help you process the text, right?
Language.
And the right brain is like, let's say that I show you a picture of a garden. Your right brain would help you look at that picture and interpret it as a whole, like put all those pieces together and interpret it as a garden. Whereas the left brain will look into details. Hey, I see a flower there with 5 petals. I see a butterfly. I see a woman walking. So, these two brains function very differently, but they have to function together. Because at the end of the day, as human beings, we need both sides of the brain to do all the cool things that we get to do as human beings.
Correct.
Right? So during the first few years, brain development is so intense, and most of us know that. Because when the child is born, everything is new. The physical brain is there with all the neurons. And by the way, babies have more neurons than you and me, like any adult on the planet. But it has to be connected. That neural connection has to happen. If not, it's of no use, right? And how does that happen with every experience that they have? And with every experience, they learn something about the world. And every time they learn, the neural connections happen, the brain is built. So because during the first few years, they have hardly any information about the world around, they rely heavily on the right brain, which is very intuitive. It does not need much information about the world around. So they have easy access to those, high-speed processing, subconscious learning that you and I might not have because we have enough data about the world around. We've collected enough data about the world around. And so we rely heavily on the left brain, which is the logical side of the brain. So, that is pretty much, the major difference between the right and the left brain. But the concept is giving that opportunity, being aware of how the brain functions and giving the opportunity for the child to grow in all these areas, stimulating so the brain grows, because the brain at the end of the day grows with use. It's like a muscle. You give it a workout, the more it expands. And one more thing to add, the right brain is, the emotional side of the brain. And that is why you see a lot of tantrums in children, because all they have to do is just work with their emotions. The logical side of the brain hasn't developed much. So it is important that, we help them, give them the tools, be it language or be it that awareness about emotions, so they become emotionally intelligent and know what to do when they're experiencing those big feelings and emotions.
Absolutely.
Right? So, yeah.
So that I absolutely agree with you, Grace. So I'm a parenting coach. So what happens is when parents ask me that, ma'am, is there any way to get rid of the tantrum? So I always say it is not possible. You've given birth to humans. You've not given birth to robots. So you cannot actually possibly remove tantrums. What you can do is you can stop those triggers. Why is it happening? You can actually tweak those triggers by the way you behave. So no tantrums is absolutely not possible. So then the second question is, ma'am, does your child throw tantrums? That I was like, obviously he does, because I have obviously given birth to a child. So I mean, that's so much answers to what you said right now. That absolutely, that's why, because the right brain is so much intuitive and related to tantrums, and the logical side is not yet developed. So obviously the child will show tantrums. So that answers my question as well.
Yeah, like what we say, you cannot, tantrums are a natural part of child development, but what you can do is reduce the intensity, frequency,
Huh.
and the duration of a tantrum. You cannot eliminate it. It is just not
It's
possible.
not
As you
possible.
rightly said, as human beings, as long as we live, we would experience big feelings. It's just that babies do not have the tools
Correct.
yet,
Huh.
like babies and young children, I mean, but we do. But even with all the tools, with a fully functioning brain, we sometimes
We,
throw massive
absolutely.
tantrums. And expecting that from our children is not realistic.
Absolutely, I agree. So what are those some effective techniques or exercises that parents can use at home to promote
Yeah,
the whole brain development in their children? Because that's like a very common thing. I would like to do it for my child as well. So what are those little exercises, techniques, or what exactly can we do it as moms?
sure. One thing that's quite popular is flashcards, right brain. The
Hmm.
reason why, again, it's not just about showing you flashcards, but it is about why you're doing it, having that
Hmm.
understanding as to why you're doing it. There are many benefits of using flashcards, and
Hmm.
the primary benefit is you are helping your child learn so many facts about the world. And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, that is not there. They're born with little information about the world. And when you are um, introducing flashcards, you are even making it possible for the child to learn about things that are not easily available in their immediate environment.
Hmm.
Like, for instance,
Hmm.
you using a flashcard, you can help your child learn about a rhinoceros that I'm sure you and I do not have in our home, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's a fact about the world.
Yeah.
So those are simple facts. The word, like when you it is the foundation, it's a building block.
Hmm.
You need to know the word first in order to understand more about the word. But
Correct.
if that word doesn't exist in your brain, well, now it doesn't exist in your world. You
Hmm.
don't know that there is something called
Correct.
rhinoceros. And so when you don't know that there is something called rhinoceros, now what would you learn about it? Right?
Correct.
When
Correct.
you know about, rhinoceros, now you can compare it with another animal and say, hey, how is it different from this animal?
Hmm.
How,
Hmm.
what does it eat? Where does it live? Is it a wild
Hmm.
animal? Farm animal. So those are complex learnings that come on top of that simple learning,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So flashcard is a great tool. And the other thing is human interaction, especially in this day and age. Children don't have that interaction because we are busy, we are living in a nuclear setup, and we
Hmm.
have technology to sometimes babysit. But taking the time away to have that face-to-face interaction can
Hmm.
go a long, long way. And they say
Hmm.
human babies need human interaction to develop optimally.
Right.
When that's taken away from that equation, that is when we see language delay. Then that is when we
Hmm.
see social and emotional issues, ADHD and autism and all of those things.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
parents, we are around our kids most of the times, but not with our kids, doing that
Right.
face-to-face interaction. We
Correct.
are with them, meeting their needs, but how often are we sitting down with them, playing with them,
Hmm.
connecting with them,
Hmm.
understanding them as a human being?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? That is a simple thing, but at least spending like 10 to 15 minutes every day, I think that can go a long, long way because
Hmm.
children learn the best. Not, of course, flashcards are a great tool, but learn the best through everyday experience interacting with the human being in
Hmm.
their life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, sorry, please continue.
no, the other thing I wanted to mention, I had three in mind was songs
Hmm.
and stories.
Hmm.
You can help a child, you can help them overcome a misbehavior or help them overcome fear just by
Hmm.
telling, simple stories that they can relate to. We've
Hmm.
been using stories all along,
Right.
yeah, for a very long time. And stories are so powerful. And songs, well, there is magic in music. You
Hmm.
can help
Correct.
boost their memory. It helps them, if a child has a tantrum, does not want to brush, just singing a toothbrushing song in
Washington
a
story.
silly tone, right? Happy
Right.
toys can go a long way instead of getting into that past struggle.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with it, I could remember singing a song with Ribha for brushing teeth, and that's how he learned. So I can completely relate to what you say. So
Yeah.
also, Grace, I would like to know. So when you say about flashcards, now can I say if I show them flashcards on screen versus I show them flashcard on physical. So how would you differentiate both of them? Because this is a very common question which parents have. Like, okay, ma'am, I am anyway showing flashcards on YouTube for that matter.
Mm-mm.
Is it
Okay.
actually developing my child's brain?
Okay. There are many factors that contribute to that. Before I could answer, I think I need to address that. See, there's until 16 months of age, they don't know screen time. That's what a American Pediatric Association suggests. But after that, screen time by itself is not bad. High quality screen time, according to Harvard University, can help with early learning and development. It's a good thing, but it is important that you use it mindfully. For instance, I've seen a lot of flashcards on YouTube for babies. There's this jarring music at the background, right? And then the pictures, if you notice, the child will still be benefited, but there is so much of things going at the background too. The picture is not clear. So, for instance, if there is a lion and there is a tree, when you show that flashcard to the child, well, now what is a lion, right?
Is it a tree or a lion?
Yeah, or both, right?
Or both, yeah.
So it is important that you choose what you show the child wisely. But digital flashcards or physical flashcards, if your child is above 18 months, well, you can go for it, but make sure that there is no jarring background. And you set perfect limit to screen time. Don't just let that babysit you because it's flashcards. The child keeps scrolling through and that becomes, an addiction.
Correct. Thank you for addressing that, because that is like literally that answers a lot of questions in terms of mindful screening or exactly monitoring what your child is seeing, because that parents are not doing. We feel that, we get 20 minutes or half an hour of our free time. But what exactly is going in their brain, that we are actually not understanding. And because of which the lot of children, like now, at least in this modern world, we see a lot of children with speech delays, which was not there earlier, because they're so much exposed to screen. They don't even know how much time.
Yes. I mean, parents, they think that it's just educational content. My child can watch it. But that is great. They might be learning, but that there has to be two-way interaction, you see. Communication goes both ways. So it is not passively sitting there just, consuming content. Yeah. And then nursery rhymes, just by learning nursery rhymes, the child is not going to learn how to talk to another human being, how to live in a particular situation. That has to happen with real-time experience of interacting with other human beings.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, how do you address the unique development needs of children with different styles or challenges?
Yes. The basic belief is every child is unique. Of course, every child is born with unlimited potential, but every child is unique. And sadly, we know what's happening in the traditional world, right? We have standardized curriculum. We test children using a standardized test, and then we label them. Like some kids well, and the others don't. In our community, what I teach is the golden triangle. Observe, identify, and nurture. It is important that you first observe your child, identify what their strengths are, what they gravitate towards, what are their strengths are, right? And to help them, there are many ways, but if there is three common things that you can do that would fit into the needs of every child, one is connection. It's a universal language. It doesn't matter what learning difference the child has. The primary requirement is the child has to be connected with the person who's teaching, right? So connection is a major thing. If you can simplify it, you can use the child's strength, but if the child does not feel connected with you, learning doesn't happen there. But even if the child has learning differences, if the child likes you so much, I bet the child is going to be so open for learning, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The second thing is, I would say, what is it? Looking at the child's strength-based training, we call it, like looking at the child's strengths is some children might be visual learners. Some children might be tactile learners. They take in information very easily by touching and experiencing and stuff like that. Although most children are like that. So pay attention to what is their strength. And not just that, maybe a child might like cars, and using car as a tool in your teaching, while you're helping your child learn, using the favorite toy, even though sometimes it can be a distraction, but
Hmm.
using your creativity and coming up with ways as to how to use that particular tool when it comes to learning. Maybe if you're, for instance, if you're teaching counting, right? Let your child count cars.
Hmm.
That, yeah,
Hmm.
the power struggle would drastically reduce, because now the child gets to do something that he or she enjoys.
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. That's true with when we learn phonics or other things also. Like
Yes,
when the things are right in front of them, then they enjoy more. That's why we say like learning by doing is much better than just sitting and, watching or, watching you talk and consuming, because that is very difficult and trickier. Yeah.
yes.
Absolutely. So, with that, can you share some specific examples or like success stories from your practice where the whole brain development techniques made a notable difference?
Sure. So there was this mother who joined a community. She was a mother of a 2-year-old. When she came in, she just wanted to know how to give her child the best experience possible so she can, accelerate learning and brain development. And she came in so she would get some activities. Of course, we have a lot of activities, but other than that, we focus more on bonding, because I'm all for connection.
Hmm.
If that is taken out of the equation, like for instance, you can do all the activities you want, but when you're constantly yelling at your child, when you are, when you don't know how to process your own emotions, well, it rubs off on the child too.
Right.
Very soon, the child will not come to sit down and learn with you.
Correct. Hmm.
That is gone. So she came in to just get activities, and she was just in for a surprise, because it is not just activities. Before we start activities, we bond with the child. We have that ritual where
Hmm.
we hug the child. We call it the 3P model. Like, you use positive affirmation, positive encouragement, and physical touch. Physical touch is, really powerful,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
With those high fives or hugs, it
Huh.
really relaxes the child, puts the child in that safe zone where the child is more open for learning.
Hmm.
And she was
Hmm.
like, "Ooh, what am I even doing here?" So yeah, and according to her, she was like, I came here for the child, but then it is about me learning those skills, those little
Hmm. Hmm.
tweaks that make a huge difference. So it is not
Right.
just the what, doing flashcards or those activities, but how we do
How?
makes
Hmm.
all the difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in this, I also remember. So I don't remember who is the famous psychologist who said this. He said that 12 hugs a day makes a difference in child's life and increases the oxytocin in their brain, which helps in development of the brain. As soon as you said that, it is not about, and I mean, just showing what all or making them learn. It's about the physical touch. That touch
Yeah.
or that hug makes so much of difference, like the child's brain development or overall development or child's confidence, everything is boosted because of that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, so how can parents really balance the academic achievement with emotional social development in their child's upbringing?
That's a interesting question, actually. Very important question, I would say.
Mhm.
So, of course, academic achievement is important because that is how we find a place in the society. But it's also important to understand that most of our success in life comes from
Mm.
social and emotional development. Research says more than, close to nearly 80% of life success is from social and emotional development. But
Mm.
sadly, not many people talk about it, or not many
Absolutely.
parents
Mm.
really give that importance
Correct.
as how they're supposed to,
Huh.
right? We
Huh.
place so much of importance to the 20%,
Hmm.
which is of course important, but then uh, let schools do their part. We cannot
Hmm.
change the system, but at home, I think it is important that parents are aware of how social and emotional well-being can have a huge impact on how their
Hmm.
children turn out to be later in life. When it
Right.
comes to fulfillment in life, it is not just about getting a high-paid job, right? It's
Hmm.
about having that fulfillment. It's about knowing, understanding themselves and process
Hmm.
their emotions, understanding their partner's emotions, and having that great relationship. At the end of the day, we are social creatures. We find joy and meaning in having meaningful relationships,
Correct. Hmm.
right? And also our children. Like, if we don't figure things out ourselves, like even if we have kids, we love them dearly, we'll take a bullet for them, right? But
Correct.
when we constantly get into that power struggle, and instead of enjoying our life,
Hmm.
now where is that enjoyment now?
Right.
It is,
Right.
you do what I did. I went to school. I did well. You do well because someone else is doing that. That competitive mindset.
Correct.
Okay,
Hmm.
competition to some extent, it's healthy, but also realizing what is so important, which is social and emotional intelligence is non-negotiable.
Hmm.
If we really want to have a more meaningful, fulfilling lives, it is important that parents pay attention to that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. What role does really emotional intelligence play in their child's overall development, and how can really parents nurture this aspect effectively?
Right. Emotional development, if a parent wants to nurture, I think it has to start with us, honestly. I mean, that was me, right? I just shared with you my story.
Right.
I thought when we become parents, it's all about the child. It's the child, what can I do? What is the
Mm.
best thing that I can do? Because we all love our children dearly,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. Huh.
We will do anything for our children, but we've, we're not aware of what is the priority.
Hmm.
We have a priority, right? Parenting begins with us. And so if we want our children to be emotionally intelligent, I think we need to model it
Hmm.
first,
Hmm.
right? Like we need to first learn those skills needed. We need to
Right.
be aware of how emotions work. And the second thing is, for some reason, primarily because of our upbringing, we feel uncomfortable when our children experience big feelings like anger,
Hmm.
sad or mad or frustrated, disappointed. We cannot just take it. And so,
Right.
for some reason, we interpret it as, oh, there's something wrong with my child. He's getting angry all the time. Or we interpret it as, oh, there's something wrong with me as a parent. I'm not doing the right thing.
Hmm. Correct.
But understanding that emotions, as you just rightly mentioned at the beginning of the call, is part of being a human. You
Hmm.
cannot eradicate it. It'll come and go. You know,
Right.
that is a gift that we have. It
Hmm.
tells us about the inner world. So you cannot just uh, eradicate it completely.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the other thing is welcoming all feelings, but
Hmm.
welcoming does not mean you approve of that behavior.
Hmm. Hmm.
Our
Hmm.
one of our job description is to teach our children to have those skills. So when
Hmm.
they experience big emotions, what is that they're supposed to do? It is not to shut that emotion down,
Hmm.
but when they're experiencing like maybe anger, what can you do when you're angry? How can you communicate still respectfully? What can
Hmm.
you do to calm your body down? Maybe you want to
Right.
take a break or take deep breaths and drink water. Again, you cannot just teach a child, yeah, okay, when you're angry, you take a sip
Huh.
of water. It doesn't happen that way, because when you're angry, you have this fight, flight, freeze response in your brain.
Hmm.
It is autopilot. It's the alarm system in your body. It's like, wow, 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 and you're
Huh.
autopilot, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
You immediately do what is in your, what you've been doing all along, or what you've observed other parents do, or your
Absolutely.
parents do.
Yes. Yes. I agree. Hmm.
So when you model, when you break that pattern, now your
Hmm.
child can learn from you, because they learn the best through everyday interaction with other human
Hmm.
beings.
Hmm.
So I think it has to begin with us.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the other thing is, really taking the time to labeling feelings, because
Hmm.
children do not know about,
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
it is. You need
Hmm.
to give them words. Every time they are angry, call it out. I
Hmm.
see that you are angry. I see that you're sad. So
Hmm.
calling it out gives them words that they can
Hmm.
use.
Hmm.
It helps them understand their experience better.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
not just that, because of that, awareness is the first step. When they are
Hmm.
aware, now when you give them the tools, they are more likely to use it.
Huh. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this reminds me. So my daughter is 12. So in their
Mm,
school, they did an emotional chart. So
mm,
in today's day, how much percent was I happy? So they were doing a pie chart, and they could name, it could be less than 50, 40, if you're tired, sad, irritated, frustrated. So there were all the feelings, and they had to jot down top five feelings and create a pie chart of it, which actually tells me that, it's important to call out your own feelings and talk about it rather than hiding it and let later, struggling with those feelings. When it is called out, then obviously your half battle is won, because
yes.
I'm feeling this, and you can communicate the same thing either to your parents or to your caregivers or to whoever, even in office. Like, I mean, when we are growing and like in future as well.
Yeah, yeah. Like, Daniel Siku, right? Like most parents would have read his book, The Whole Brain Child, and stuff like
Yes.
that. He says, name it to tame it. When you have a name for it, it's easy to
Easy
tame
to
that.
take. Absolutely. I so agree. So, in your experience, how do like cultural or family dynamics influence the implementation of the whole brain development strategies?
Okay. Um, Again, when it comes to whole brain
Mm,
strategy, everything is involved, all the aspects. We look at all the aspects, and we
mm,
begin right from when the child is born, that awareness has to happen.
mm,
And cultural, I work with parents all over the world, but then especially India, let me talk on behalf of India, our country. Even though awareness is there right now, earlier
mm,
when I started this journey, the mother would wanted to practice whole brain development,
mm,
starting because she
mm,
has the awareness, but most of the family members would not agree to it. They would be like, why are you torturing the child? You
mm,
know?
mm,
And I completely agree from where that thought is coming from.
mm,
Because most of us,
mm,
when we were growing up, learning was not fun.
mm,
It was
mm,
for the most part, boring
mm.
lessons, assignments, punishments, whatnot, shaming. And so we associated learning with torture, learning
Mm,
with pain. And
mm,
so generally, because they love their child or grandchild so
mm,
much, they don't
mm,
want them to go through that same experience as how they went through,
mm,
right? That is a
mm,
very pure intention.
mm,
But it is important to also understand that learning is not education. Education begins when the child starts school, but learning happens at birth or even before that.
before birth.
And learn more, all of us, when we were born, this is not the mindset we had. We wanted to learn. We were all for learning. We were biologically wired to learn because
Mm,
that is
mm,
how our brain is built and wired.
correct.
So a baby loves to learn, wants to learn, is all for learning. But what is the intention that we have as parents is so important. Like if you're forcing
Mm,
your baby to sit down, your baby would run away. But if you go
mm,
with your child, if you first understand before doing any activity per se, if you understand how the child's brain is built, what are the things that my child needs? What are the different areas of development that I
mm,
can cater to? Uh, then we can do a better job. And so first the mom comes in, asks, the clarifies this information, and then when parents and the other members in the family see that the child is sitting there enjoying, so
mm.
because you cannot just force a baby to do anything against their wish, you
Absolutely.
know
Mm,
right? Like
mm,
you try forcing, your baby will scream and
mm,
run away,
mm,
whatnot.
mm,
But if a child is sitting there enjoying, asking
mm.
for more, which means that you are giving what the brain needs to build
Ah,
itself, and they're
ah,
literally enjoying it. And so
right.
they get really fascinated,
Mm.
after that experience, and they're like, okay, I'm going to do some too. I'm going to support this journey.
Mm.
But at the beginning, there's this cultural, difference. I mean,
Mm,
people outside India, again, still there are some pushbacks, but then the
mm,
mindset is kind of open. They
mm,
want to do their, they want to explore.
mm,
But within India,
mm.
moms have challenges to convince people in the family.
Absolutely. I can completely relate to this as well because when I started parenting coach or I started my whole journey as a parenting coach. So not my in-laws were super supportive, but other people in the family were making fun. Who learns parenting? And why on earth should you be learning parenting? You are born, you have a child, you have given birth to a child, automatically you're a parent who learns it. So there is a mindset block, but when people see difference, like you rightly said, like when people saw that my child is improving or enjoying or having fun despite of no no bribing or no yelling or screaming, the child is really enjoying, then the difference happens, because then that is what is the mind shift. Like, there is
Yes.
a change in the mind shift. Oh, I was thinking this, but actually he's enjoying, so I'm good with it. Like, go
Yeah.
on with it. So yeah,
I
absolutely.
completely agree to it. I mean, that is what most people think too. I mean, what is there in learning about parenting? What is there about? There's so much. I mean, I tell my parents I work with this. Parenting is one of the most important jobs out there, right?
Correct, correct.
And every job you take up in this world has some sort of training whatsoever.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
parenting is the most important job because it requires that you raise another human being.
Right,
Now,
absolutely.
yeah, what kind of training do we have? We don't. And so it is
Absolutely.
trial and error that, we make mistakes, we learn from it, but a child's life, I don't think so they deserve to be a trial and error. But
Correct.
when we equip ourselves, like, as a parenting coach, when somebody learns from you, they are confident, they can take on this role confidently
Correct.
and do a better job instead of just, being confused, overwhelmed, not knowing how to respond to the child, getting into past struggles, and making that journey really not exciting as much as it's supposed to be otherwise.
Correct, correct. So,
Right?
so that is when I also share one example. So, whenever parent asks me that, why do we actually have to learn parenting? I simply say that when you get your new car, you have a new car, you're super excited about it. So you first learn driving, then you go and ride it because you know it will land up to accidents. It is just a car. It is a non-living being. Now, the same thing applied on your child. You've given birth to the most precious thing in this world, and you are a mother because of that precious thing. Now, this is not just a thing, it's a human being. So when it is just a car and you just given few amount of money to get that car, you make a conscious effort of learning and knowing how to drive before going out and you're driving. So why can't you really learn parenting before actually going out and throwing your child on the world that, hey, now my child has grown up, he's independent. So I completely feel that so much. And I have this example for ages. I use this example for all my parents.
Beautiful example. That's a very beautiful example that all of us can relate to. It's very practical.
Yeah, yeah. So, so given one of your child is the youngest Mensa participant in the USA, how is your approach to the whole brain development influenced your parenting and your child's growth? First of all, congratulations for that. But yeah, to this question.
Again, my journey started because of that, as I
Correct. That's you
started
mentioned, yes.
my elder child, right? I thought I was doing the right thing, and then I realized that was not enough, and then I learned about labeling. I mean, like the whole thing, even though at the beginning I gave into that philosophy where some children are born gifted and talented, they are, really special, and others are just average. For some reason, it did not sit right with me. I was like, well, it is not so. I started to question myself. If at all I wouldn't have given those experience, do you really think the child would have started reading? In this day and age, until like maybe a decade ago, people thought that, some children, one day they finally take up a newspaper and start reading, like toddlers, I mean. People believe that. I went through many interviews, and those questions were asked to me there. What did you do? Or I hear that some children, like when they start reading, they start early, they take a book or a newspaper and start reading. The truth is, if that experiences matter so much, nature versus nurture, right? Of course, your genes provide the blueprint, but experiences shape who you become. So that, yeah, stimulating experiences are necessary. If you ask me that question, like maybe 6 years ago, I would be like, I have no clue because I did not go through the thing to teach him to read. And for me, I mean, like I was mind blown. How in the world is he reading chapter books? I don't know. But reflecting back right now, I know exactly what happened because I was reading a lot to him. I was also engaging in conversations about, creating print awareness, print in the environment. By the way, you can teach almost anything because everything that we do in activities or books is all around us, be it math, science, or, language. So I was doing those activities as well. So that gave him that stimulation, and his brain was able to put pieces together. So that is the start of my journey, asking those questions, having my moments of like, oh, what's happening, and how is it working? So yeah, that triggered my journey, actually.
Nice, nice. That's lovely. So, what are those common challenges which parents face when trying to support their child's cognitive and emotional growth, and how can really they overcome those challenges? One is bonding, which you mentioned, that yes, you
Yeah.
need to bond, but what are those other things which
The other thing is, I would suggest awareness. Like, for instance, with social media, what I notice parents doing is they just go online, they get random activities and they do at home, not understanding things at its entirety. I think
Hmm.
before you can start doing activities, it's important that you understand your child, understand your roles and responsibilities as a parent, understand what are the areas that I need to support my child,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because there are
Hmm.
different areas of development.
Hmm.
And also understanding that, doing some random activities might, of course, to some extent benefit the child, but not
Hmm.
fully. Like a mother might end up doing some DIY activities, spend hours and hours, doing those Pinterest perfect or Amazon work activities, and then do it for the child, and the child might not be interested. Now the mother is disappointed and thinks, oh, there's something wrong with the
With
child, or
my
there's something
child,
wrong
huh?
with me, I
Hmm.
wasted my time. And so it triggers anger and frustration. Either the
Right.
child mom would show it on the child or give things up completely. So social media is a great thing to create
Hmm.
awareness to some extent, but I think parents had to it also has this downside where too much of information,
Hmm.
wrong
Hmm.
information. And
Hmm.
so I think parents need to, like, first understand those basic little concepts as to what am I supposed to do.
Hmm.
And then when they learn, I think they don't have to suffer with FOMO. Am I missing
Hmm.
enough? Should I be doing that activity? If I don't do that activity, I'm
Huh.
missing out on something. My
Huh.
child is going to be left behind. No, it is not
Hmm.
so.
Hmm.
Right? When you know the fundamentals or the foundational principles about brain development and parenting, I think you can be confident in this journey. It is
Hmm.
not about how much you do, but what you do. Those little interactions that can go a long way. You don't have
Hmm.
to spend 1 hour doing fancy activities, but 10 minutes of mindful interaction, when you know the big picture, that would go a long way. I
Correct.
think that awareness has to be there.
Hmm. 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 I agree with you. I agree with you for this. So, how can really parents get in touch with you? That is the most important thing now. So, in case parents wants to learn from you or parent want to get in touch with you, how is the best way to connect with you?
I'm on social media as Grace Riyas,
Mm.
Riyas.
Mhm.
And also, I do my free webinar.
Okay.
Um, I would share the link with you
Please do.
so
I
that,
will put it on
yeah,
the podcast. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Perfect, perfect. So thank you so much, Grace. We had such a wonderful session wherein we understood about the brain development. We understood that bonding comes before doing, and so there were a lot of takeaways from this, so from the session, from this podcast. And I want each one of you to actually go through this podcast one more time so that you can understand the basics of it and get in touch with Grace for any special needs or do you do one-to-one consultation also, Grace? If
I
any
do, but
interested.
I've paused for now because, like, we're in the matter of moving countries. We are in Canada, going back to US, but I would
Sure.
resume it very soon.
Sure, sure, sure. So, one-to-one is also available, but make sure that you attend her free webinar, which she does, so that you can get more understanding. This is just an overview and just a short form of what exactly she has to offer. It's much more than what we've discussed here. So with that, thank you so much for hearing and watching, and we'll come with another podcast very soon.
Thank you, Swati, once again for having me. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, Grace. That means a lot. Thank you.